Okay, I'm over at the bench here and I'm playing with this water pump. Now, when I had Queensland Tractor Spares, we sold a water pump to a gentleman and it went out and he said he hadn't used it, but it was out of Sparex's warranty period and it looked nice and new, and we thought, well, you know, we will honour the warranty on it, but we won't sort of talk to Sparex about it. We'll just do it ourselves as a business, as a goodwill gesture. So I didn't film pulling it apart. I was mainly pulling it apart for my own satisfaction to see what I thought was going wrong with it and see if it was a warranty problem or not. And it turns out that this is the seal out of it. Now, these seals, they have a ceramic ring just under here. Then they have it's like a carbon rubbing block, and this sits down and turns on there nice and evenly. And so, this is a new seal. This is an S.43576 seal from Sparex. So this water pump, it was an S.43576, and I pulled it apart to see why it was leaking. Was there a warranty claim or not? Even though we'd given it to him, I just wanted to know if there was a problem coming up. And by the look of the seal, there's a section completely broken out here, and so no wonder it was leaking. And look, I thought it had been dropped, and dropped on the side there, and you can see by the rust inside the seal there that it had been leaking, and there was a rust trail coming out the telltale hole here as well. So I was confident that we should do something with him, and yeah, so we sort of gave him a new one, and I come home here and pulled this one apart. So another thing I found with this water pump, when I stripped it down and I was cleaning it up, this is the front bearing that goes in behind your drive hub here, and they had a spacer in there between this and the bearing there, but it's useless really. There's no real need for it. But this bearing here, when I pulled it apart and I popped the seals out and washed it up to clean it up, you can tell, I'll put it near the microphone, but anyway, it feels rough. And by washing it up, I thought, well, perhaps I can take the any bit of dirt in there or whatever out, but you can't. It's actually marked the bearing inside here, so that confirms that both the seal and the bearing, look, it shows sign of being damaged in transit or dropped on the concrete or something like that. So what I've done, I've got a new 6203 bearing, a 6003 bearing. Now these bearings are cheap as chips. Sparex have them. Actually, don't discount Sparex for buying bearings. They have some bloody cheap bearings compared with other places. So what I've done with the bearings, and look, you may not agree with what I'm doing here. Many do, many don't. But I've popped the seal out of one side and I've packed more grease in there. I'm using the LSA LX2 grease in this occasion. And I've done the same on the 6203. Now, when you read the bearing books, which I have and did, it said that no need to add any more lubrication. They have enough lubrication for the life of the bearing. But in saying that, I have had these bearings go rumbly on me and things like that. So the original water pumps, they had up the back here somewhere, they had a grease nipple, and there was a little grease track come in, and between where the two bearings sat on the shaft here, they actually greased it. And so I thought, oh, why not, you know? I believe Sparex are the only ones with this smaller bearing here, which is fine. I think that's a good thing. It doesn't matter to me. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to fit the bearings. I'm going to leave the seal on the outside. I'm going to press that onto the shaft here. Look, and that's only that won't be much of a press fit, that one. And this one here, I'm going to leave the seal on the front. And so between the two bearings here, well, we have a little grease reservoir, and I'm actually going to put a little bit more grease in there. Then when we press this in as a unit, we'll have captive grease in there, so if it gets hot over time or anything like that. And look, you may not agree with me on this, that's good. You know, perhaps the double seal was better. They're 2RS bearings, 62032RS and 60032RS, which means radial seals. They're not ZZs. ZZs aren't a positive seal. And so look, you may not agree with that, but I'm just going to do it on this one. Now, I'll get this, I'll go to the press and I'll press these two bearings on. I'll put a bit of grease in the middle here. And then our next thing is to pop them down into the housing there and put this circlip on. Then once we've done the circlip, another thing about this too is your hub here, like your hub is supposed to sit down that way and your fan bolts there. It's just a perfect size for pressing the bearings on. So use that if you want to. And so we'll go over to the press now. I'll set up again at the press. We'll press these two bearings onto the shaft. We'll lubricate the housing in here and press those both in as a unit. And the other thing, there's no real other way of doing it apart from just pressing these down, using these sort of spacers and things to press them down in place. And I know you're pressing on the outside, putting tension on the bearings a little bit, but we'll have a look and see. But we can't actually hop into this small bearing here and support it, where we can probably grind down an old outer and use that, or just use the old bearing even to press this in the housing. So I'll go and set up over at the little press. I've only got a tiny little press over there I use for these things, and we'll get that done, and then we'll talk about fitting a new S.43576 seal. Okay, I've got it the setup here. I have the two bearings sitting there waiting to be pressed on. I have a washer that sits on the press, and just the two press blocks that came with this press. Now this is just a cheap 6-ton press from Super Cheap Autos. You don't need a lot of pressure normally to play with water pumps. And I might put that there because that supports the shaft a bit closer. And if I put that there and a long socket down there, try and make sure I centralise it, and just come down gently with the press. Okay, that's all the way home. Doesn't take much to do really. So we'll take that out. We'll pull, see that's our pulley that I was talking about earlier. And look, that was that little bearing spacer that they gave us. We'll just use that as a bit more of a support. And we'll see if we have enough travel to get that on. I think we should. We're just pushing it up to this shoulder here. Okay, so that's good. So what we've done now, the two bearings are on the shaft. So I'll put that over there, keep it nice and clean. I'll bring the main water pump housing over now, and we actually have to have a gap in the middle because the shaft and the impeller comes out through here, but try and support it where you've got webbings here. So I've got two webbings there, two webbings here, and that'll give us a bit of a hole in the middle. So I'll get an oil can A little bit of oil where the bearings go in, just to help them in. This is where it's not ideal, as in if we push down through the centre here, we're pushing on the centre part of the bearing. Okay, we'll put this spacer there, then this socket, and that should get us down. I'm hoping it gets us low enough for the circlip to go in. We'll just see how that goes. I think it could just go just a little more. So we might just now that feels just firm. Now, if you've got to put too much stress on this press, you're doing it wrong. You've got to pull it off and have a look. So that has the bearing in nice and deep. Now the snap ring that holds it all in, you see a round side on the snap ring and you see a sharp edge. The sharp edge goes to the top and the round side goes to the round side goes to the bearing, and the sharp edge catches in the groove. So at this stage, we've got that sitting there like that. That's looking good. It's nice and free to turn. Away we go. I was actually going to put a bit more grease in there than I did, but anyway, that's okay. We'll work with that. Now, the next thing is to turn this upside down. We have to support this shaft here and press the seal into place. Okay, on the press, I have a plate here I made ages ago with a few different size holes in it, and I've just got a couple of washers there, and that's supporting the shaft, main shaft here. Now we have the seal here. Now this is a S.43576, that's the Sparex water pump seal. Now it seals down on the shaft here, so if you have a little mark on your shaft or a stain or something you're not 100% sure about, just get a little bit of Loctite 515. A little bit of 515, I'll wipe that off my fingers. And you can see on the seal here, there's a sealant on it already. So we just have to bring that fella down. You don't normally need to do this, but my shaft has a couple little marks, so I thought I would. Then you have this tool here. Now, we're probably going to try and put some specs out for this tool. There's a few different ones around, so we'll see how we go with that. And we'll put a couple of little spaces up there just to take up the gap. And we'll try and get this pressed down nice and even. So we might just use the tool to start with. Or I might put this here, put the washers there, and that'll pick it. Whoop, that'll pick it up a little bit for us, so we're not pumping for so long. And we just press this down until that flange there is level with the top of the Now, I've just run out of space there. See the water pump impeller shaft is level. So what we're going to do now is we'll put this one on. Actually, I'll just put this little spacer, I think, and that'll give us enough to use the next piece. Then from there, we'll go back to using the old flange. Now we take that down, and you'll see that the tool sticks out. You can see it's a nice even surface there, and this seal tool with its step inside there, that has set the tension on that. The little bit of Loctite we put on the shaft is sealed around the shaft, so all we need to do now is bring this impeller down, and same setup, we're still pushing on the end of the shaft. We will put a little bit of oil in there to help it on. And once again, we're going to try and get on as square as we possibly can. That's feeling good. Now we let him back off, and that lets the press reset. I'll just let the press reset again. And look, that's level now. I think I might just use this little spacer. Out there, and I might bring this gap here down just a little bit. So the impeller's just sticking out a little bit. That feels real good. All right, we'll go back over to the bench, eh? Okay, well there's our water pump. We've put a kit through it. And look, that'll last well. Now, sometimes with water pump kits, when you've got the tension on the seal right, you can turn them and you can just see it spring back slightly on the seal. Mainly on the single bearing ones, but this isn't doing that. But that'll be a good water pump now. We'll be able to use it in Bundy Bear shed. Now, the original S.43576 had this spacer there, and then it had this cotter pin collar come down over the top here. And now this is what your fan bolts to, and it's what your pulley bolts onto. Your pulley sits down over here, and look, the spacer does absolutely nothing. So there's no need for the spacer, because by the time you put it down there as a spacer for the bearing, then this comes down and hits the side. It doesn't do a thing. So I do have, this is a genuine flange is the word I'm looking for. And look, it has the same profile. It feels a little bit tighter on the shaft, but so it has the same profile. So I just believe that spacer is, I don't know why it's there. It may be to stop rubbish building up around there or something, but and there's a aftermarket, old rusty aftermarket Bearco one. It's the same. So look, I think I'm going to leave it off on mine. I can't see the sense in it. Now, when you have a look at these shafts, you've got a cotter pin flat here, you've got a keyway there, and you've got another cotter pin hole there. It's mainly this one that you have to use. And another problem old mate was saying with this pump was when he brought that down on there to put the cotter pin in, let's just have a look there. Yeah, so that's locked that in place. I often, sometimes there's a little thread. This is for the cotter pin, the washer, and the nut here is for the cotter pin. Or I'd even put a nylon lock nut there. I think that'd be a good idea, like something like that. But I also often just put a washer and a nylon lock nut up here, and you don't want to push it tight so it's forcing this down, but it's just one of those things. If something fails in here, you have the shroud, your pulley comes down over here, so if this comes loose, it can't come out because the tin on the tin on the pulley, coming down on an angle like that, it won't let the pin ride out. It'll hold it in there, so there's very little chance of that coming off and going through your radiator. I've had people over the years who've seen some things, but look, if you've got a chance to put a washer and a nylon lock nut on the end of the shaft, certainly do that. I think that's a great idea. And that's one here. So it's a larger washer and a light nylon lock nut. So look, that's just a safety thing. Then this here, you can actually move that up and back, look, only a couple of millimeters worth, and that can help line your belt up if that's what you're having trouble with. But the other option you could do is on these corners here, grind them off, and then that would give you more adjustment as well. So it just depends what you need to do. But you've got to be a bit handy to play with old tractors, so it just depends which way you'd like to go. But what I've done here this morning, I've taken an old warranty claim water pump that's not been usable at all, been pouring out, and yeah, we've made it as a new unit that I can sit on one of my restoration tractors. I wouldn't sell it, but it's just one for my restoration tractors. And yeah, look, hopefully watching that little video, that'll help you. If you have a water pump, an aftermarket water pump or any water pump, pop it apart. This being an aftermarket, an S.43576, if you're trying to restore a Bearco water pump, and the Bearco's got the chunkier housing and all that, but they have two 6203 bearings in them. They don't have the 6003 down the bottom end here. It's basically the same setup though, and keep in contact. I do have a 1951 TEA 20 outside that I'm not sure the water pump has ever been done on, and I also have a TEF 20, and they're the same pumps, so I don't know whether I have an original pump in the fleet to do and show you, but if I have one, I'll show you for sure. But look, that's just what I chose to do to this pump. We'll catch you later, eh?